What are you I have 50 what's on one. Midterm. Four. Vertebrate things. So go to the grades and see the video. I was there.
So we're taking out people. See if I can push
If it's about.
Yeah.
Almost did it without our help.
Yeah. No, you still have to come to class. If that's the only reason. No, I mean, for the
What? What? That can't be right.
We're checking on midterm grade.
I'm proud of you. I told you. No, that can't. Shut up. This is the right class. This is the right class.
I don't know. I haven't heard of
Like, are you sure how it's second of all? I didn't even feel like that. How did I do that? Sammy, kill it. How did I do that? Kill this.
Take the one, don't question it.
Yes, but don't question it. Don't question it. You just did really well. Excuse me, what? First, I'm just good at whatever it is. Look at you. I'm 84. What? 84. What do you say? I got 58.
Let's break the ice, people. Morning. I'd like to know why you're here. Be online, but you prefer to be in person. There's got to be something to it. I still don't get it, but yeah, I still prefer to come in class myself. So I don't know if it makes any difference for learning. So I think it has to do with possibly self-discipline. Some other people can just they're on their computer anyway. They're gonna log into every sequence of Zoom. So regardless, I'd like to know who wants to come up with a suggestion of a Halloween, the best Halloween costume. Anybody? Cute. Awesome.
That's a devil.
A devil?
That's
Oh,
me.
that's really original. Big frog. Yeah.
I was a mad scientist because all I had was my lab coat.
Years without mad scientist doesn't exist. That's a given. I'm gonna give out more candy. It's definitely waiting for the mad scientist to show up. Good. So we're still gonna do some wildlife management, believe it or not. So, you know that I'm working on this course as we go. Of course, it's just a matter of, I would have liked to have a notice to prepare that course, but no. Yet, I've been involved with wildlife management from somewhat of a distance. Remember that if you're a politician, you could be involved remotely in wildlife management. So the degree of involvement, I always teach as if you're all going to get a job in wildlife management straight and calculating numbers, modeling your habitat and all that stuff. That's 100%. Starts the remote contact, engagement, commitment to wildlife management. The jargon's already used, for example, some of you might want to be science communicator, that's the math I hold. And your job is more to do the actual science and the numbers. Okay, so there's some for everyone in that course, that's what I'm saying. There's lots of room in wildlife management. So the approach to this course, as I said many times, is multiple. There's tons of textbooks. They all have this angle and this angle, polarized vision, this and that. So we have to pick somewhere and start somewhere. distillery that you can go on with the specialty that you prefer. Like Australia, only go for it. And so right away, whoop, sorry. I always do that. I do minimize and I can't minimize. So instead, I'm gonna go fancy and share a screen. That's better than anything. It's a bit of a melting pot, and I wanted to make sure that everybody's on board with the format. So on. I mean, the questions are pretty simple. You know, how abundant is the animal and what that. So I hope you find everything in sufficient organization that you can go through this material. So this one is getting longer by the minute. I made a mistake this morning. Michaela noticed that. Made the mistake of preparing the course for this morning. I thought, what a crappy course. So I would, and it's still going to be crappy when I leave this room. So don't worry about it. Okay? And another important point is that I expect you to excel during your oral presentation. Yet I can't do half of what you guys are doing. The idea is that you work finally, on, to fine tune the presentation for a short spell of 5 minutes. I'm going to entertain you guys for a couple of hours for sure. So it goes quite, another 5 years. All right, so we were well advanced in this chapter 3 called Wildlife Management, an overview, as in definition, and then a few case studies. So we started the scenarios with 1, 2, and 3, if you recall, and we're going down to 4 with possible definition eradication. So these are typically known as conservation issues, scenario 1. And we've seen that already. We've seen this is pretty important if we're into scenario 2, which is harvest. Keep in mind that the public opinion around the world. See whaling. There's cover. Yeah, people consume it, but they're against whaling. So it's really a big contradiction. So how much can you harvest if you decide to harvest? If it's something of nutritional interest, for example, the cod. Yeah, bonus question. What is the name of the island that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for cod? And the answer is Newfoundland. So people stopped Newfoundland and they built the house only because there was cod out in 30, 60 feet of water. Beautiful, fantastic. I mean, the north was Irish, I think. The south was French, and they fought in between, but everybody was on cod left and right. They reproduced a lot because the nights were long. Built a ship, a little boat, and they paddled with the wind, I guess, to Boston, Massachusetts to sell cod. So the economy of the island was about strictly on that. You had 12 kids, the age of 1 to the age of 18, was spreading cod, salted cod on the rocks to dry and preserve the cod. Yep. Hey, you see, that's pure entertainment right there. So we're talking about harvest. Big case about the maximal sustainable yield that we're looking at large numbers that are group. I mean, this is called a continental shelf of Newfoundland plateau. And that plateau produces cod from one end to the other end. It's a basin. Cod and small herring. Yeah. So we've gone through this already, so I guess I was talking about this right here, so. Again, it's very important, every fisheries person will know this MSY acronym for sure. It's the very basics, and again, you're fourth year, you know that this thing has a bell shape, but it can be moved. The better course, like here, all so the alternative, so if you move the top part of the bell to the right, you're looking at a population that can sustain more of the harvest, which is, that can, you have to reach 75%. In this case here, you have to reach this model, this particular model. It's telling you that you can harvest all the way to 50% of your population before affecting the recruitment, which is all right. Yeah, that's so this is a colony right here. Maximal sustainable yield is right here. So this is where there's enough breeders. If I would want a story short, there's enough breeders. 60% of the population is still there. They're all very happy. Making this as comfortable as possible. So in other words, they reproduce a lot because there's the residual, this as my target, the residual population is way below carrying capacity. This is carrying capacity when at Cape, when, sorry guys, too nervous, I will not reproduce. Sorry, my estrogen is low, I will not reproduce. Sorry, my testosterone, I've been in the fight, bar fight, I will not reproduce. So no more recruitment, and that's when you don't want to do that for sure. All right. So in other words, the big question is how much of the population can you take, right? This one says 50%, you're safe, right? Some population require more because at 50%, suddenly think of an animal that reproduces. No, I'm thinking cheetahs, for example, the cats, generally speaking, probably require a bit more of the residual population at 75. So you can see how that bell shape tends to go to the right. So it's a warning signal for people, a sort of a threshold value that people agree on. Doesn't mean it's true. And your job as a scientist would be to exactly check that out, see if at 75% of the carrying capacity, say for a Tanzania park, suppose out 200 cheetahs, you bring it down because of poaching. Is that good enough? How many kids are they getting? Which is your sustainable yield. That's the recruitment you're taking. So you take two, the population gives you back two individuals, right? All right, so let's go down. So you see that I spent a little bit more time on this. You can expect a bit more, focus in the exam if I keep repeating the same stuff. It's likely to be at the exam. We've gone through this already. This is the fur industry. And notice that we're talking numbers here, eh? Wildlife management is about the number of animals, low or too high. And hopefully like next week, hopefully Thursday, we get started on the habitat. Because habitat is a different dimension altogether because it encompasses the idea is to see how many animals you're sheltering with one kind of habitat. So we'll get there. Right now, so we're focusing on the animals themselves, the biology, as you well demonstrated in your orals. The basic biology is very important. You need to know how this animal grows, fast or not, and what kind of habitat requirements it has, and how it reproduces. So very important in this group. The trappers, this is done mostly by trapping because it's easier on the pelt. So again, the most humane killing would be firearm, apparently. This is not me saying that, but official authorities, a bunch of commission of veterinarians in Canada are grouping together. Watch Humane, what's it called? Canadian Council of Animal Care, it's called CCAC, Canadian Council of Animal Care. We have Dr. Yopi, raise your hand, Dr. Yopi, any pro-vet people? No, from Lively has a clinic out there. He's been with the Laurentian forever for the mice, say at the former animal house we have. All right. So, yeah, I mean, we have to make a short story. So fur bearers, as soon as you have this designation in Canada, suddenly this is the profile that you're getting. So you're likely to be asked by the ministry if you're using kill traps, if they're proper. They have to be approved, so they have to be a commercial. There's no Jerry who's gonna rig something up on the Saturday night. No. All right, which still happens to this day, especially poachers. They're totally broke. Go out and I'm thinking where there's serious poaching, and that's more likely to be, let's say, third world countries, because they're generally poor, right? So more people with less money, so with heavy poaching. All kinds of scenarios just to try to immobilize the animal. All right, so kill traps approved, organized in townships, that's 100 square kilometers, trap lines and so on. So I think you got the idea of this right here. This is nothing too difficult, I believe. We were looking at this is a summary, the relationship between harvest and fur price. Because for many, the argument is, well, if you allow the pelt to be worth $1,000, you're getting overpriced. So good answer at the exam. This is the relationship between pelt price and harvest. So of course, this is a pretty bad illustration. I don't want to go into the details right here. We can't even recognize this whole format one day. This is going to be a good course. But the point is, if you want to take home on this, the milk price has lost its influence. So because the animal still has to be because there are just too many, therefore the animal it did at some point, but not anymore. This is due to the fact that it's not the quality of the pelt that makes a difference on the price like it used to. Lynx beautiful, chinchilla beautiful, and so on, right? Now it's public opinion. Nobody's willing to pay any money for fur because the image of the fur that you're supposed to be wearing is not equal to public opinion worldwide. So, very short answer to the exam. Good point. Public opinion makes a difference in this case. So, and harvest because of recreational use. So, for example, in Martin right here, the numbers have gone up after a serious decline because there was an over harvest because of prices. That was this is a time span that covers a few decades, correct? So we're talking post World War II. Lots of fur in the bush, and people were really. You should have seen the demand at the auction. It at some point was insane. People would, bid over just to get that special Canada Lakes and so on, because there was no fur in Europe, and we had lots. Well, and that's historical because of beaver. You know that, right? I mean, sorry, a very long time ago. This is how we probably built Montreal on beaver money. beaver fur. The job of the settlers was to bring in people that could survive the winter, trade with the Indians, and send ships to the king in England and get more ships in and more wood and so on. So build a colony. Beaver number one absolutely beats them all. Settlers knew about the other species. Marten is second, by the way. It's totally unknown, but marten just quite common, beautiful fur as well. And then mink got big and so on. So we could go on, and we won't. So we were here, I think, and I decided to highlight some of the new materials. So this new file, by the way, on D2L is now called something 6. More slides to go. That's fresh from this morning. So of course, the key words are the answers I'm looking for at the exam. So I'm going to formulate a question around that. This is the whole story is about the very strong debate. This is a very nice case study of an animal that is, yes, right, the coyote. Everybody watch, I don't know, Predator of the Roadrunner. Oh, that's too easy. And he cute? He's cute, right? Yeah, when he falls from the cliff again and again. So, so very appealing animal, very prolific. This is the biology part of it that makes it a problem, is that this animal really reproduces really well. And the reason for it is that its fitness is good. Why? Its fitness is widespread. See, I'm using the jargon here. Because fitness is about survival, therefore survivors survive really well. And really well, therefore it's prolific. All right, so it's about survival, and so therefore survival, you think of food, all good. This animal can go for blueberries for a month. This animal can go for a rabbit. It could go bigger. So I need to stall on the coyote because it's a the interface with the human is quite complex. So what's its let's say, who are the people calling for nuisance coyotes? Anybody? Tell me who's gonna call the ministry for a nuisance. I mean, really, Ontario is not the best. Like, no, Ontario is not the best place to talk about. Simply because we're at the northern coyotes, so this is what is happening. So think of Illinois, think of the entire U.S. and Central America covered with coyotes, and it's crawling to our area. So now it's probably breeding more hybrids with the wolf. Red wolf, all kinds of subspecies. Very complex situation. So the basic, for sure, is the fact that this animal in this scenario is to be over, but because then the interface becomes too much pressure. So tell me, I'll repeat that question. So why? So who's the first person to call for insect coyote? Cattle. Specific. From the cattle, go for it. You're a farmer.
Or if they have like any sort of livestock. Because then it will kill the livestock.
I'm not sure about the end. We'll get a chance here.
Like smaller livestock, like chicken farmers, rabbit farmers.
Oh, chicken is not too bad. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say chicken, but I also go for like sheep, maybe. Yeah.
The chicken is replaceable, but sheep, that's it. And the sheep always have this large pasture. It's hard to keep inside, and it's always a somewhere. And lots of coyotes teaming up. Talking about, you know, you guys like the biology, the origin, ecology, and so on, right? So we can stall for a second. What makes the coyote so, you know, gives it an edge over the next carnivore?
That's flexible diet.
Flexible diet, very good, for sure, absolutely, I agree. So, and I want to go extremes to make a short answer at the exam from a dump, right? So we can feed in the dump and it can also feed straight into the, so get a drought, for example. So very flexible, a wide range of nutrient. Oh, what else? Gives it an edge, yeah.
Isn't it that they aren't afraid of humans like other carnivores are?
Say that again?
They have less fear over humans because they're more likely to interact with humans.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, I call it commensal, this animal has a body. Close, not too close, right? They're not getting you active, but or basement. You can't get a coyote to get inside your house. I've seen people track wild deer to their desk. So no, very astute animal, right? This larger fox, basically, right? This animal is proactive. It has its nose everywhere. It's got 10 ideas at the same time. Do I go for this chicken? Do I go for this pork? Do I go for this raspberry? All kinds of opportunities. Keep shifting around. Oh, I was thinking of the grouping. So here is this tendency to make coalition. If you want to go fancy, they can call it coalition. A coalition is more than a random acquaintance, like, oh, I'm standing by Michaela. This is not a coalition yet. We have to make some kind of a pact or deal, correct? That's what happens with coyotes. So especially I would think teenagers, for example, especially the same sex, two young males. Don't know it better, so let's go to the bar, the grouse bar, or the rabbit bar. So they hang out together. Beautiful footage I found on YouTube, right? That's all I got to do, right? This guy summarized a year of filming with high definition camera, audio, and only video, high quality, color during the day. The little bridge that he made to cross a creek has seen 200 armadillos, 300 raccoons, and this is the count I went through for an hour, roughly, and fights, and then bobcats, and then everything is on that bridge. So. And 2 coyotes. They watch each other and say, "Oh, Jerry just found something. What do you find? What do you find?" It's always like, "Oh, is there a frog? Is there 2 frogs?" Or 2 people. So they work together. Quite a difference. I can see that rabbit turning away from the first one just to jump into the second one. So quite a phenomenal animal. Larger as well. So that's another feature of the coyote that makes it into the sheep. The fox will not go into the sheep, right? The fox would like to go into the sheep, they just won't. Hard to handle, for sure. So, yeah. And livestock is definitely a good answer. I just want to point out that they don't take adult cows every day. Your cougar, on the other hand, will. So that's a different animal altogether. Out west. So, so it is prolific. We know now you can answer a more detailed question on the why it's prolific. Why as well, and so on. So but some website will say, oh, it's adaptable. I don't like that very much. Let's go, to more detail. What exactly is so adaptable? Where can they switch to a different strategy? alone together is good. Different habitat like farmland, edge, ecotone. You find them in every ecosystem. This is set somewhere else, I believe. Let's go down. And this is the argument against the first statement. You remember that? So at the bottom right here, this was a statement I found, then I went for the other opinion, which is the first. That's telling you that there's unfortunately not too many ways to deal with the problem, but to extract some animals. That's the argument. I'm not taking a side, but you have to understand some people are totally against and some people have to. So that's why I want to see the exam for sure. So in other words, the pros and cons. The cons, what are the cons against taking coyote again? Give me some arguments against taking any coyote. Some people's more pure than I am. No. Secret talent,
Public opinion, your neighbors might hate you.
So you're talking nature lover? Yeah, good answer. Nature lovers, with all respect, this is perfectly fine with me. I love nature myself. I just came up with that more balanced opinion on it because I see the pros and cons, which I want to see. So absolutely, animal lovers and human nature lovers is certainly, so that calls for a total preservation and so on. You were to make a sort of sociological study, you might find that the inner core of the bigger cities will have or tend to have that kind of opinion because there might be less in contact with the reality of a coyote being in your backyard, or two coyotes for that matter. Which is something we happen. For example, in Sudbury, it's easier to think of people making peace with black bear harvest than downtown Toronto or, sort of big cities. So these are the arguments to try to maintain this, I'm going to call it a call simply because, but then the Fur Institute wants to call it a fur bearer situation. In other words, perfectly legal. It says the law is behind that. This animal is classified by Kosiwit as a fur bearer, meaning not allowed. So that's the legal protection, if you like. Doesn't solve the problem of the public opinion again. So you're still stuck with that issue for sure. So the idea is, of course, to come up with compromises. For example, once you recognize that coyotes are widespread and they're a species of least concern, you can do local control. Notice the word local. That means there's no widespread program to eradicate the coyotes. So Canada will not get into that if they ever did. It just looks really bad at the international scale to come up with one solution for a large country like this. So, local control. I said Vancouver, right? Was dealing with 7 animals. Lately, it's Stanley Park. So, and again, they overdid it. Say, oh, we got 2 adult females and so on. They actually, pinpointed the animals they were taking away from the 7. So, and they didn't take them all because some people still want to go to Stanley Park and see some coyotes. So, yeah, you see the list of ecosystems right here: prairie, forest, desert, and mountain landscape, as well as urban areas. I'm going to say suburban, if you like, suburban areas. The densities are good to bring to the exam as well. Try to make yourself a list of the quantities that we're going to be talking about. We're not covering every species. Let's pick some case studies and go deeper. So the maximum, and that's where the problem would be at 2.3. So I see 2 things here. An average 2.3 per square kilometer is quite a bit. Because that's your average across, say, the district sundries. Another thing I noticed that 0.01 is very low. That means that it's extremely variable. So you can't count on reading one area and making sure the next area has many things. So the word I use is volatile population. Volatile, that means that it fluctuates quite a bit. They move out and you don't see them for a month. They're not extirpated, they're just not around at that point. So densities vary quite a bit. That means it calls for local control again, right? As opposed to a widespread program. Here's probably the weakest argument of them all, is that the sale of calcium, if it's reinvested into management and conservation, better science, better knowledge. Therefore, at least the first not lost. Again, the argument of the first is that something has to be done about the animals, some have to be taken. The idea is to come up with the best situation. Regulated harvest, very careful, local, and so on. So it's more costly. You take Jerry from his day work and say he's receiving phone, say, we have a problem at Stanley Park. Suddenly is, he's on demand for a local application of some sort. So change of topic. Sorry if I made this very long, it's just me. So the seals again, very long story because it's we're at scenario 3, an animal that's not extremely desirable. I mean, I don't remember anybody having a seal of the head. That cute. Sort of. Baby. Some are not that pretty. But maybe this a little better. Sorry, guys. That's a little better. And then how about it? And then that's an hour into the course. And now I'm going to slideshow. Super tech. So I know more of the seals, of course. I picked something I got stories on. The kinkajou, for example, don't know too much, inshallah. Although I'm very much into mammals. So 6 species, good to bring at the exam right here. This is the Kenyan story on seals. Because we can't do it all, they're international species for many, they go out our borders. And all have their particularities. So the harbor is both on the Atlantic and Pacific. That's pretty spectacular when they're the same species. I'd be interested to the gene flow. We're tracking all the things. There's none on the Great Lakes, right? So 2 species. So that means there's 2 stories because first of all, I would highlight Pacific because if you find literature, harbor seal, it will come from the state of Washington. Because that's where it publishes paper. Second, what they have on the West Coast that we don't have is called the Pacific salmon. Big industry. You're talking ecotourism, like a lot of people travel the world to go to some Fraser River, maybe, something like that. British Columbia. Then you've got 200, 300 seals that are fishing right at the mouth of that river. Terrible. So, and they're very big animals, so they all know about Pacific salmon running the rivers. When did they run the rivers again? Those salmon? Anybody? You know. Oh. Like from Mentor Island, right now, anybody from Mentor here? Just say, of course, right away. So you know a couple rivers on Mentor? Have you seen any rivers? I mean, the salmon must be running.
They're
No,
still
I
running. They've been running for about a month. They've been running for about a month.
a month, yeah. So it's because we stopped Pacific salmon into. Pacific salmon doesn't. Oh, sorry, yeah, Atlantic salmon will run. All right, so but it's Pacific, I think that runs the rivers I meant on. Harbor, so highlight Pacific because of the Pacific salmon. To make a very short answer at the exam again, the story with the harbor has to do. So in other words, I go to Quebec and because they got the Gulf of St. Lawrence, then I see saltwater, I see seals. I will see harbor seals, I take a picture, I love it, and then I go back. That's all. So in other words, no problems with the fish. Yeah, we have fish. What's the fish again that we find in the Gulf of St. Lawrence that created Newfoundland? Yeah, 3-letter word. Cod, good answer. Again, the cod industry is looking carefully at the seals, so that's going to be our next story for sure within this section. The ring is Arctic. The ring has a cultural value. It's a last I checked, and that's a while ago, but I was. See, we're looking at 6 million, population 6 million. Because it's in the Arctic, you can imagine other than cultural, there's no international equipment, therefore no management equipment. All right, so that's the end of the story. It's a small seal, so everywhere, on every website, you will hear the ring seal being associated with Inuit and First Nation. Extremely valuable, so anything that has to do with pollution, for example, would be in that, with that focus. And then we get into, I'm gonna list the 3 others right here, and I'm just gonna skip the harp seal, which is the rest of the story. So the bearded is not very abundant. It has a beard. This is the one right here. And the hooded, guess what, has a hood right here. I guess everybody's seen that, I hope, this bearded seal, so very spectacular, it's everywhere. Just to attract females, so the bigger the bladder. So, not a long story, why? Because they're not super abundant. So bearded, occasional, hooded, I'm gonna say accessory species, because the numbers are all in the thousands anyway. It's when we get in the millions that we could get a problem. The gray, 500,000 maybe. And the gray is not here in Canada. The gray is more towards, what's this island off Massachusetts? Anybody knows their Google Earth, anybody? What's this island? It's got wild horses on. Come on, I got 3 bets here. Good Lord. What's this island that has a population of wild horses? Oh, called Sable Island, and it's got a population. It's a fairly large island. It's got a population of Greece. So, therefore, not our concern. We see them occasionally, and they will be mixed in with the next topic, which is the harp seal itself. So the harp seal has a very long story. Where is this guy? Where's this guy? It's going to be this baby right here. So I did it on purpose. Many of you might know the story already, but I'll have to bring everybody to that. So hard seal, first of all, we'll try to show that it's a larger seal. Not that it's very large, but it's a larger seal. And as compared to the ring. A ring is your small little thing. But almost that's really one, but the hard seal is one of the larger ones. The three is probably the biggest, but it's not very big. So second feature is that it's super abundant. So we'll see number in a second. Third feature I'm going to say is a migratory. And you know what that means? It means it's not full-time resident. We're concerned because obviously it visits every now and then, right? So it in water somewhere. And then another feature of the harp seal is, of course, its diet. And we're going to say, keep it simple. Keep in mind if there's a capelin. That's all commercial fisheries. And then another feature, the fact that it has a beautiful pup. Beautiful pup. So it's called in English a white coat. So you need that at the exam because it's emblematic. It's totally, I mean, this is what greenfish will use every second day. Website talking about the white coat. So here's the exam and question. What do you call what's a white coat? The answer can only be one thing about the pup. Early pup. I'm going to say early pup of a harvest. Well, first we need to know about the biology of this animal. So, so once we got these features, we're looking at abundant. Well, let's see if we got something else for sure. Certainly, the world distribution of a migratory species. And let's see what we got for time. Good. So this is a strange map looking right at the North Pole, I believe. So I got the Arctic right here, but if you look carefully, this small triangle right here is Newfoundland at the bottom. And this is all the way on the other side with Barents Sea, for example, which I don't know too much about. So this harp seal in French is called a Greenland seal because it spent 9 months in Greenland. So definitely an Arctic species, and it spends the majority of its time. Yeah, Greenland. And then migrates for what? For reproduction. And those are the green. In the green are the spots where they reproduce. So they're called whelping. Whelping is a good term to bring at the exam. Again, we're focusing quite a bit in the details here. So whelping grounds. Say grounds because they're not on the ground, but the whelping areas are the key. Of course, there wouldn't be any management necessary if it wasn't for the whelping areas, because that's when they get close to our Canadian waters. There's this one right here that I don't care about, but suddenly this is Newfoundland right here. So you got your binoculars, finish your espresso cappuccino with a large one, and look out the window, and the harp seals are coming. There's one, here's two, here's four, here's eight, here's eight. It goes up to current numbers are around, I would think, I read 7 million coming in within 2 weeks. Order of magnitude only, just to say that it's a rough event. So you're in Newfoundland in March. Now, in March, you get the spring, Arctic spring that brings the ice floes. Ice floes is a good answer. Ice floes is the prime habitat for whelping. It's written down as a FLOES, floes, ice floes. FLOES. So there are a few like a million small icebergs. That's what the nice flow. So it's not a straight gap, like gap, and it's not close to this. It's nice. So, but beautiful for the mothers. They each pick their own or a bunch of them, and they go fishing different times they give birth. So on. That lasts about 2 weeks. So you're looking at 14 days. That's when the Newfoundland saw the opportunity to go off unemployment. They're thinking, okay, cod is really out there, there's the ice everywhere. This is not the season, we're not doing cod. We're going to Marcus said, look at that. If you see that for and say, you're right. They couldn't care less about the adults, but when they saw the pup. So the market boomed, and really, at the time when that started, you were looking at 3 million, about 3 million carp seeds, adults. So half of them are females, half of them give birth, so you get 1.5 million pups on the ice within 2 to 3 weeks. That's it. After that, there's not enough ice. Before that, it's too cold. They haven't arrived yet. This is when it happens, and it starts barking on the ice. I'd love to be on the shoreline when that happened. So of course, the ships, the codfish, the ships went into the ice and started culling, harvesting the pups. And you can imagine, I'm sure that these days, like in 2021, teaching that kind of stuff is extremely damageable for your brain. Regardless, animals are being harvested every day. You should, of course, you should have a lab somewhere in a butcher's plate to see how they take down a live cow to make your steak, your next Costco hamburger. So it's harsh reality. The reason was not good enough. So what they did, and I'm still on the harp seal. Gray seal, pup is ugly. And although they'll go for a few, but never like the white coat. White coat's 14 day. Let me go on with that story. So it molts right after 14 days, like quickly. How much fat is in your milk at home? Anybody? How much fat you have in your milk at home? What kind of milk do you have at home? None. Oh, zero. Oh, no milk. Oh my God.
1%.
1? Okay. So what's a regular milk? Okay. So what's a regular milk?
What's the question? What's the question?
What's a regular milk at the store?
2% is what
My regular milk is gone. You're saying it's gone? So I was raised on 3.25, so 3.25%. That's the amount of fat in the milk. Oh, no, of course, that's 1% innocent. My milk, the almost milk. Yeah, that's it. So, see how strong and thick? Milk. So 3.25, so raise your hand, you've never seen that in the store? We have to make a special trip at Food Basics, is that what it is, or? 3.25, oh, man. Hey?
I've seen it before.
Yeah, so it's just all homogenized, but it's not thick. Fats are 2%, or we've got to understand it, I'm on 2% now. But 1% is killing it. My coffee doesn't change color, and no, I can't go with 0%. So, how much fat in the milk of a hard silk cup?
assuming it's a very high content.
Yeah, what's a high content? Let's go back to the basics. What's a high content fat here? Come on. My yogurt's at 3%. I know it's fat, I know. Oh, you guys don't know fat at all, eh? We can only talk protein and better.
Factor over time.
Protein?
30%.
The highest fat content I see is in sour cream and it's 14%.
Yeah, 14, and you passed out in front of the counter at 14%. No, whipped cream is 35%. So it turns solid. The hard seal has 22%, not too bad. So it's close to whipped cream, so your grandmother would call it table cream. So back in the day in your coffee, you want to change color, you use table cream, it's at 15%. So the hard seal is about there. What a meal, eh? Whipped cream. Comes with the nipple, so easy access. No. I hope they got the nipple. I think they did. Somehow. So I made a very long story on a harp seal because it's very emblematic again. The politics, the journalism, the science behind it, everything. Huge study on that, every possible aspect, including public. So that means hiring sociologists to do surveys for the country. So, and that's only because, so I'm gonna say March and April. So you're looking at 8 weeks of harvest, March and April. Actually, it's a period of, a long period of the whelping, but yet you're cut. Once it's born, and they're mostly synchronized, they're just like, your turkey, for example, would be synchronized. And that's 2-week period when these animals were harvested. So they brought and I told you that story already. They brought models and journalists from England right up to the ice during the harvest, and they took photographs of the models in high heels and dressed on the ice floes with the blood around them, and sent that back to England and cut as they called for a seal band. So bring that to the exam, it's called a seal band. So of course, that means officially the England and the United Kingdom would not officially ever buy anything that collapsed the market right. Now from 3 million, the profit is now 7 million. Meanwhile, of course, we have problems with the cod, so the Newfoundland people are, they can't go for cod because they destroy the habitat. And they can't go for seals because it's not allowed. So a compromise that I've written down right here, just to finish up that story here. It's a very long story. Again, we're locking very large population that comes in for a particular application, and the harp seal would be safe, I think, if it wasn't for the public. So the whole story about the harvest at first, the harvest was for the public, and then its cuteness created a problem. So here you got harvest quota. Canadian populations as here for the harp seals, that's over 7 million. And this is the harvest quota for 100,000, which looks truly huge. A very large animal, but yeah, this is only a fraction of the population, which is 5%. Think of the maximal sustainable yield model. You're taking only 5%. Seems reasonable. Again, I'm not a Newfoundlander, but I guess they have their own opinion on the whole story, and I'm sure they're pushing for a population control. The gray seal, just to let you know, population of, I say 500,000 roughly, and the harvest was limited at 60,000, but you see that it's still double, so it's that 12% of the population. So we talked about the March and April. Excuse me, I'm choking. That's a good sign. It means the course is almost done for today. you want to go fancy or detailed, maybe in some management procedures, one of them is this way. I could put that in the final, for example, right here, this second statement that says that the DFO, which is Department of Fisheries and Ocean, I hope it's clear for everyone. Department of Fisheries and Ocean, DFO. Very important, we're talking, I think, about the fisheries. Created the 3-year harp seal, known as the fisheries who care about the seal. Not necessarily the environment. A 3-year quota of nearly 1 million animals, but spread over 3 years with the conditions. So one strategy is to not do it only for a year and then come and see it again. 3 years to control the population, 1 million animals, 975,000. I don't need the exact values, but they're allowing 1 million animals over 3 years. And look at this, a little fine print. It says, by the way, you're not allowed taking your million in a single. That's what it says. Over 3 years, so you play with your numbers, but don't over harvest any given year. Population tripled probably since the 70s. Other stories is, for example, the climate change again, and it come over and over again, that be on habitat almost, but in this case, yeah, it's targeting the habitat, which is, did I say again, small ice? Again, your mothers will not reproduce in the water. They need habitat, they won't be on land. If you lose the ice flows, you lose the farm seal. So in terms of conservation, this is a bit of a warning. Definitely, people are worried about the lack of habitat, just like for the polar bear, of course. And apparently, it causes the pups to drown. That's pretty drastic as well. And then the demand for seal pelt is down for sure. And the prices are down as well. So this is the current situation. Again, bottom line, take home is animals have to be taken. It doesn't seem to be through the free trade. In other words, you can't just open a company and go for sealed. The red tape and the paperwork is humongous. and there's no money to be made. So guess what? Taxpayers end up paying for the bill. So they will take seal, but they will send the ministry technicians and to help the population. There's something to bring as well. So marine mammal regulation in 1993 described in particular, I mean, regulation is huge, but 2 items are important is the rifle. So it's not true, you cannot bring your own. You can't be just a BB gun. That's very important. That's the humane part of it. I hope you all get that. And also, of course, if you're looking for a scalp, and Hakapik is a something that was super debated because it wasn't the first movie they made, where it is called very long ice pick. You describe it as a baseball bat, but it has an actual steel pick that instant. So of course that was extremely barbaric because that's something you can show to anybody, just like you can't show a surgeon opening them. So if you watch that on a video somewhere, it's not very easy. Same story. Therefore, Dow got into a review. They got everybody on board saying, let's go to the lab and try these things. 25 longer, heavier, bigger, whatever. They tried everything. And they still approved these two. So the rifles are allowed and the hack and pick still, the vet approved this saying, if you want to, render the animal unconscious right away, skull fracture is absolutely the way to go. So you look at images finito, you remember the white coats and I'm adding to that. So the white coat was the historical harvest, and then suddenly the animals, they molt right away after 14 days, they turn to blueback. So try to remember that as well. We're still the harp seal. And these animals are not taken anymore. So the new procedure is to wait until the mother doesn't care so much. Kind of half rule for the pup, half rule for the mother. Comes back on the guys, wants to give milk.
Sorry, just clarification, on the slideshow, it said that bluebacks are infant-footed seals. So is it the harp seals after they molt?
Oh,
or is
yeah,
it
I'm sorry, yeah, thanks for, the blueback is the white coat version of the hooded.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah, that's okay.
That was a mistake for sure. So yeah, bluebacks is not the molting of the white coat. Is the name given to the baby of the hooded seal. Just how the blueback to it, not white. So that was bad for the same reason, and now they're waiting after weaning again, so that the mother is a bed. Eventually, weaning it. No more milk for the baby, so the mother takes off. She's now up on my path, and she starts feeding again. And the pups are supposed to be independent at the time of their molt, and this is when they're being taken. The market still exists, so I see a couple of countries. Let's ask for 2 or 3 at the exam, because not the entire world, that's not Africa, I think. So we'll see if we were to pinpoint some countries who are still accepting, I put this, accepting seal products. Finland, China, Hong Kong, Finland, Denmark, France, Greece, South Korea, and Russia. Norway is #1 apparently. Asia receives seal meat, so that's not bad. And again, it's not my place to promote or demote any of these actions. This is just reality. This is what's happening right now. If you have a position against or pro, it's your place to do it. This is when you get involved. So European Union banned that, the EU it's called, right? The European Union has banned all sales products, so the numbers collapsed. So I want to stop right here. Thanks. We'll get
No.